Okay, hello and welcome back. We are continuing with Our Life Beginnings and Always, specifically the Baxter DLC epilogue. I started it last week, but considering that Derek's epilogue took me 6 hours total to do, I'm guessing it's going to take at least this week and next week, maybe more, because I don't know how long it is. Which is fine, because I'm going to be surprised. So, the long and short of it is Baxter broke up with us at the end of the summer, like he indicated he would do. Why am I saying us? Me. My character. And my character was upset about it. And, depending on your character's reaction, it does affect, the choices that you get when you see Baxter again during the epilogue. And I know this because I was like, well, let's see what happens if I change the reaction of my character. And I'm like, oh, that's what happens. Interesting. So the reason that you even see Baxter again is Miranda's brother, Jude, is getting married to his longtime sweetheart. And they hire a wedding planner to help them get this wedding together in a short amount of time, and the wedding planner happens to be Baxter. Which, once I realized where they were going, I knew it was going to be Baxter, because the wedding DLC for Cove, you see Baxter again. And considering how you run into Baxter again here, I'm sure people can imagine how Baxter shows up in the wedding DLC. So we just played a game, just bowled basically against between the two teams, and it was Jude, Miranda, and Terry, who is now a man, by the way, goes by Terry with an I, against Scott, Jude's fiance, yourself, and Baxter. And Miranda throws her every her rounds. Basically, she finds increasingly creative ways to do gutter balls. And Jude and Terry both do their best to make up for it. And there's an option to throw your matches to kind of make it even, but I didn't feel like it because it's like, that's not the point of playing a game. Miranda can choose to throw matches as she wants, but I wasn't going to do that. So between Miranda throwing her rounds and the rest of us doing fairly well, we end up winning. And there's a moment where you can either hug both Scott and Baxter or just Baxter. And on the stream, I hugged both Scott and Baxter. But when I was testing to see how your reaction to Baxter breaking up with you affects your choices later on, I went ahead and hugged just Baxter, and he relaxed into it. He enjoyed it. So part of him likes it, wants to give in, but he's holding back. And oh, sorry. Yeah. And so I'm just like, okay, let's see what's holding him back. So here we go. So now Jude and Scott have been going nonstop trying to prepare for the wedding. So Baxter and the rest of you have decided that they are going to get a break. They're going to leave the rest of the preparations in your hands as well as Baxter's. We've ordered the cake, and Terry and Miranda have been helping out with preparations, and we've shown up early to do our part to help out. And Baxter, of course, is the wedding planner. So the four of us are basically going to take care of things, and the two men getting married are going to relax for a while, because the wedding is for them. So then, alright, here we go. Although technically you all could have squeezed into Terry's van, Baxter unlocked his car with a beep. After confirming the location you were going to, he followed behind in his own vehicle. He did that when we were preparing for Miranda's birthday party, too. Once you'd arrived, you waited near the front of the craft store. Baxter must have gotten stuck in a light since it took another few minutes for him to show up. He gave a jaunty wave and speed walked over.
Hello.
I see you've gotten here safely. Pleasantries were had, and the gang pressed onward. Miranda broke away from the group with a clear mission in mind. And yes, Baxter was just as surprised to see the main character as we were to see him. I mean, I personally wasn't surprised, because that's the whole point of doing the DLC. But the character was certainly surprised. And I just remembered I forgot to grab my dice. There we go. She rolled an orange card enthusiastically. Now you were ready to go. Baxter grinned at her in return, but gave the line of cards a glance. Yeah, we did this before. We should take another. One card likely won't be enough.
Agreed.
Good call. You shrugged your shoulders and fetched a second card. Every single candidate was the same sun-faded plastic. You took the nearest option. Excellent. Let's proceed. Miranda led the way into the heart of the store, both carts clattering along on old squeaky wheels. She methodically started at the passing aisles. Hey, this looks familiar! This is the exact same craft store we visited to get stuff for Miranda's birthday party. Surprise, surprise! Yeah, and Terry and Miranda are dating, by the way. And Baxter was not surprised. No one was surprised.
What?
Oh hey, Randy knows, but I've got to warn the rest of you. There's an all-hands-on-deck kind of meeting this evening at work, so I can't make any of this stuff. After the drop-off, I'm gone. Terry faced you with a sheepish expression, not entirely apologetic. You're gonna have to take my place in the crafting circle, Jules. You nodded along with the explanation. I understand. Thanks for the warning. You are gonna be missing out on a lot, though. I know, centerpieces, that's the whole center of the event, but I have no choice. That's totally fine. I appreciate both of you being here and helping as much as you have. Yeah, poor Miranda. Don't say this around Jude or Scott, but I've been nervous they were going to be disappointed by their own wedding. She sighed and drooped down against her cart, her head almost sticking into the front basket. I know they would have been if it was only the two of them doing it. She straightened herself and offered a smile, first softly at Terry and then at you with bright gratitude. I'm lucky I had reinforcements to call. Though when she turned to Baxter, she demurred. You've been great to have on our side too, Baxter. Thanks for accepting the job. You didn't have to. Most planners wouldn't.
Gladly.
I do this gladly. Everyone has placed a lot of faith in me, and I want to honor that. Baxter fidgeted with his collar as Miranda kept her soft eyes on him. Terry chuckled. You are so sweet, Randy. Of course we're helping you. And we should get back to doing that. Time's a-wasting. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Browsing resumed and you began checking out the supply list Scott sent. The collection had you going all throughout the building, some items needing a real hunt. Does color or scent matter more for the candles? Because I'm not only finding white candles and coconut.
Maybe?
Jude likes coconut at least, but I don't think that'd fit a formal wedding. Here you're in the beach themes section. Pointing to the sign plastered on the shelf above him, you tried to not to laugh. Terry's eyes widened at the obvious. That explains the sea breeze and pineapple options. I didn't notice either. Let's move down. Baxter nodded approvingly. Along the way, you spotted a floral section and a summer section, too. Summer really that different from beach? Maybe in other places. In Cali, they were one and the same. I mean, when you're closer to the beach, I suppose there isn't much of a difference. But when you're further from the beach, there is definitely a difference between beach and summer. But since the white candles of the proper variety were secured, the supply team moved on to the next items. Now having a better sense of how the store was laid out, it went quicker. After a decent-sized pile had accumulated in both carts, Baxter spoke up. We found the more unique bits and bobs. If you don't mind, I'd like to leave the last of it in your capable hands. I think it'd be best if I could look into rental cars before it gets too late.
Yeah.
Right, of course. No worries, we got it. Go ahead. Terry ushered Baxter away with shooing motions. A car was more important than an extra body to throw fake flowers in a cart.
Very well.
I'll be in touch soon. His departure was closely watched by the three of you. Miranda and Terry awkwardly waved him off, neither full of their usual cheer. Silently, the gang pressed on, scooting the carts across the white linoleum tiles. Your friends were both still quiet. Neither knew how to act with Baxter. On the one hand, he was friendly and had been a huge help for Miranda's family. On the other, more frustrating hand, the last time you had opened up and let yourself care about him, he'd really hurt you. Baxter tried to erase himself completely, to scrub away the permanent inky book in your memories. It hadn't worked. It couldn't work. Not for you, and not for anyone else he had met that summer. What happened between you continued to linger. It kept mattering, exactly as Baxter never wanted it to.
Is that all right?
Geez, Jules, have you been okay working with him like this? With him? I think I got that mixed up, but you get the idea. Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't know. This one. Being near him is hard. I'm scared I'll get sucked in again, only to be left behind. It doesn't help that sometimes things are actually good between us. Miranda and Terry shared a look. It was a silent conversation where you could only guess what was being said.
Huh?
I get it. Baxter's not Mr. Ideal, no matter how easy it is to think so. Look at the fancy suit he's got. Look at the poise. Very convincing. I'm already fooled, I think. No matter what, we are your friends. Here, here. But it was time to refocus on the task ahead. Terry didn't have many minutes to spare, so you had to hurry. What else did you need to find again? Rushed up and down the entire store, the carts rapidly filling. Meanwhile, Baxter hung out on a bench at the front with his phone glued to his ear. He fluttered the fingers of his free hand whenever he noticed a group shooting past. He spied more flowers and booked it. When each decoration on the list was added to the masses, he approached Baxter. His phone was still in his grip, but he was no longer on a call.
How are you?
Were you able to find everything? He inspected the carts, trying to visually sort through the chaotic lumps of stuff. Everything except a chocolate fountain. He gestured at your cart, which was indeed bereft of a fountain. His lips twisted wryly. What an unfortunate loss. You were sure that was an entirely sincere, in no way sarcastic expression of remorse. My task is done too. I found a car that is to the couple's taste. I texted it to them and got approval to rent it for the day. Cool. I was even able to do so legally this time. His tone was amusingly flippant. Oh yeah, during that summer he had pulled some shenanigans to get his car. Miranda and Terry, however, stared at him, concerned. Don't worry, it's an inside joke. There he went again, blurring the lines where you stood. Yep. One moment keeping his distance, the next moment reminding you of fun. You decided not to explain further either. Miranda probably wouldn't imagine too extreme of illegal scenarios. Okay. Come on, let's play for this hall. It's gonna take a while to ring up. The rest of the gang agreed, and you and Miranda drove your cars through a blessedly empty checkout line. After several minutes of listening to the beeping of items getting scanned, Miranda swiped her card. It was done. As you headed to the parking lot, Miranda checked her phone and frowned at the time. You yourself did a double take at how long the shopping had taken. Not again. The craft store was dangerous. And you're sure you have enough time to drop us off before work, Terry? Uh-huh, no problem. I don't want to cause any trouble with your boss.
No way.
Don't worry, it's not like I can just leave you here with 50 million decorations. Someone would have to be strapped to the roof of Baxter's ride to make everything fit.
Okay.
Alright, thanks again for this. Hustling, you stuffed the various bags into Terry's car. It was fortunate his van had so much space, but even then it was filled up. Maybe you could hold some of the bags in your lap? Baxter noticed the conundrum and hummed at the mass of bags remaining. It resembled a tentacled monster when the wind whistled by and waved the transparent plastic candles.
I can do that.
I can take the more delicate pieces and store them separately in my trunk. Jude and Scott's home isn't ridiculously far from the city. I don't mind popping over there first. Thank you, but are you sure? You don't need to go through all that trouble. Hey, it sounds good to me. That'd be handy. Of course, let's pack them securely. Soon enough, the van was once again on the road with Baxter's car bringing up the rear. Does anyone remember how to get to Jude's home?
Oh.
Well, she quickly pointed her finger to the right, only to earn a laugh for the effort. I'm kidding, but wouldn't it be funny if we got lost? I wonder if Baxter would follow us or keep to his GPS's directions. I think he'd follow us at first and then call if we got too off target. You have work, remember, Terry? Plus, I'd rather not mess with Baxter. That's a bad idea. You're right. Speaking of right, there's my turn. Okay, red car, could you let me over? Thanks. Hey, that's me when I drive. I yell at the other cars. Can you give me some room? I need to get over. I'm running out of space.
Oh, yeah.
I need to take the fast way anyways. Oh, come on. Do you know how to drive? Terry drove back the rest of the way to home base with his occasional commentary of the abilities of the other drivers on the road. Yep. Sounds about right. He noticed a few vanity license plates that made him wonder about the person behind the wheel. Miranda chimed in with creative theories, usually that it was a secret code. The conversation flowed enjoyably easy between the two. It's so sweet. Then you arrived. Baxter parked behind Terry's van. You nodded at him on your way to open the back of the car. Terry grabbed a bag and another. Miranda put a bag on each finger, including her pinky. Not to be outdone, Terry threaded his hands through more plastic handles. Baxter made his own massive effort. He took a breath and gathered as much as you could manage. Everyone loaded up. Miranda led the coordinated shuffle to the door and awkwardly bumped the doorbell with an elbow. There was the muffled, melodic ding-dong of their bell and then footsteps. A moment later, Jude answered. Your group, utterly laden with plastic shopping bags bursting with silky petals, must have been quite a sight. Come on in. He scooted to the side to let everyone through. You maneuvered your bulky hoard carefully so it didn't bash into anything. Unfortunately, Terry got caught on the door handle.
Oh.
Whoops! Jude darted closer and untangled the bag. Terry shrugged with effort and slowly inched forward until he was completely inside. Is that everything? Nope.
On it.
I'm gonna go get some. He sidestepped around Terry and dodged Baxter to get outside. That was when you noticed Scott trying to usher everyone into the living room. At this point, your arms were regretting taking quite so many bags. Surreptitiously, you began eyeing any likely surfaces you could deposit them. The place was neater than before. The table had been completely cleared off, and the floor must have been vacuumed. Jude and Scott hadn't completely committed to taking a break. Scott directed the group to where the supplies should go. Quickly, you shed the weight, and the others were only a breath behind you. Miranda subtly massaged her hands while Terry slumped against the wall. Jude returned with the leftovers, which was still a generous armful of stuff. Now that's everything. You guys needed a lot of stuff. He wiped his brow dramatically as if coming from the car had been back-breaking labor. It's been much more of a joke as it wasn't actually breathing hard from carrying so much. Yep. Jude did not humor Terry's act and added his armful of bags to the pile. 2 cartfuls took a lot of space. Terry surveyed the scene, mentally checking things off, and nodded with approval. I leave this in your capable hands.
Thanks.
Bye, Terry. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, you're a good dude. Forget it. I never let Randy down, or you two also. They're basically family to Terry. Miranda brightened at her ever-chivalrous boyfriend. Good luck, Terry.
See you later.
He saluted the team and bounded outside, the door slamming shut behind him on a chorus of goodbyes. In the wake of Terry's big exit, Miranda flopped onto the couch with a sigh. Jude immediately raised an eyebrow. Something happened, Randy? You can talk to us if something is wrong. Nothing, and you're busy. Scott looked at her, face creased with worry, but her expression didn't change. His gaze drifted over to you. He was sending please help me signals. Despite his silent plea for insight, there was none to give him. He had no idea what was wrong and was perhaps even more confused than he was. Was there something going on between them? It sure didn't seem like there was issues. Miranda had seemed fine shopping. She was just joking in the car. But suddenly she deflated and dropped what you hadn't noticed to be an exaggerated smile. Scott's hopeful eye contact wasn't ending, and you still didn't have a clue. You shook your head. Miranda was the only one who knew why Miranda was upset. Jude approached his little sister. He tapped her shin with his foot. She pulled up her legs onto the couch, curling into a ball. So he sat down heavily beside her and waited for her to get comfortable. Slowly, hesitantly, she began to speak. I just feel bad that Terry always does so much for me and my family. He's a lot bolder than I am. He's amazing and can jump into anything. Terry's always been the one to take the initiative ever since we met. What do I ever do? Nothing. It's unfair. Oh, she feels it's lopsided. Aww. She hugged her knees tightly to her chest.
It's okay.
I think Terry understands. He's so outgoing, he can't help but be involved in everything. You're different. So acts can mean equally as much if they take the same effort. But what if I want to do something bold for a change? Jude snapped his fingers loudly enough to make you jump.
Got it.
You can propose. That's actually exactly where my brain went. Oh, what if she proposes to Terry? That's what Scott did. My big move was asking him to come live with me, but Terry beat you to that one already. What? She gaped at him, completely shocked out of her melancholy. Scott, however, was all in agreement.
Oh.
What if it happened at our wedding? That'd be the perfect place for a daring engagement. Yeah, that could work.
I see.
Wedding proposals are traditionally frowned upon. You both are quite gracious to suggest it. Baxter's tone was casual, if anticipatory. Miranda, however, gaped at him, and so did Jude. I forgot you were here, dude. I figured they would, but of course, it's Baxter. Very painfully aware of him. Oh, forgive me for the surprise interruption. Randy flushed with the embarrassment and straightened her posture until she sat up properly. She hadn't realized she'd started the heart-to-heart with Baxter in the room either. Jude, you're 6 years older than me, and you're getting married right now. I'm not proposing to Terry. If I'm not overstepping, why not plan a trip to go away together? A nice vacation for myself and a special someone after spending so much time focused on others would be an incredible gift. It doesn't have to be the equivalent of a honeymoon like Jude and Scott are having for it to be worthwhile. Simple does the job just as well. I'm no travel agent, but you could think about a day trip or staying somewhere overnight. There's some perfectly lovely possibilities. Miranda tapped the bottom of her lip, considering it. That's a fantastic idea. I can remember a few places that Terry has wanted to visit for ages, and most of them aren't that far. Slowly her lips lifted into a grin. That spark of inspiration had relit her fire.
Let's do it!
I'll do it. I really will. I'm going to take Terry on a mini vacation. She turned towards you, her voice reassuring. But I'm not going to run off while you're here visiting us, obviously. It'll be later. You smiled, appreciating that she addressed that before you even had the chance to worry about it. Her thoughtfulness is sweet. That's why we love Miranda. I was very disappointed when I realized we couldn't romance her, but she and Terry are cute. Thanks, Miranda, and I agree that you should go take a trip with Terry. That sounds nice. For as long as you'd known her, she often struggled with confidence. This was a great opportunity for her to try something new. She should be proud of herself.
You're really
Thanks
nice.
everyone for listening to me. I'm sorry for being distracting. We've gotten completely off topic. Hey, the party's not more important than the people attending it. Jude hooked an arm around his fiancée and lightly squeezed. Scott leaned into the embrace. I don't know what happened to my voice there. Baxter watched the scene with an air of distant contentment, like an audience member for a documentary. Then he cleared his throat.
Good.
Good luck, Miranda. I should be leaving soon. However, before I do, let's take a moment to discuss what we will do tomorrow. If the centerpieces are the final element, we won't need to meet in the morning. We can decide what to spend that time on now, if anything. Scott and Jude exchanged glances and reached a decision. Jude tilted his head back to Baxter first. We could go clothes shopping, or we could try slow dancing.
It's doable.
We can have a day of formality. The couple smiled and leaned into each other. Jude spoke directly to his fiancée.
Good call.
And we could give everybody else a break. I think me, you, and Baxter can handle the rest. Scott agreed with a brief nod. The others had done more than enough. It's settled then. Baxter's clear voice filled the room with an announcer's flair. We'll have an eventful afternoon before the big event, but it will be the perfect finishing touch. Jubilant, Miranda bounced, and the couch cushions squeaked beneath her enthusiasm.
So great.
Thank you, Baxter. He chuckled and once again tugged at his collar. Thank me after the wedding is over. Yeah. Miranda's attention drifted to the intimidating pile of decoration supplies. Will you be fine finishing the centerpieces? I think so. There's not much to do to actually put them together. It should go a lot faster than other things. That is good to hear.
Goodbye for today.
Well now, if you'll excuse me, I won't hold up your progress. I'll see you tomorrow. Jude and Scott especially, but I do hope the entire committee will be there for the last meeting that night.
Wait.
Baxter stopped and focused on Scott. For the special last meeting, why don't we have it here instead of in the office? Yeah, it's not like it'll be your first time coming over. You're already here today giving advice.
You're too kind.
Inviting me to your home? You are too kind. Who's able to answer right away? His brain was probably weighing the pros and cons, thinking of the potential ways that his choice could explode in his face. This matter was far more important than frozen desserts. Well, I would be glad to accept your hospitality.
Done.
Alright,
Okay.
then we'll be here tomorrow night. Yes, good evening, everyone. Bye! I'll see you out.
Hmm?
You will, Quite the proper host. Yes, I am. You reached forward and opened the door for him exactly like a proper host. Baxter went through with an appreciative nod, but he didn't expect you to follow. You led him to the end of the driveway and then to the opposite side of the street where his car was parked. The politeness in his smile began to crack. You kept glancing your way, wondering where in the short trip you were planning on leaving him. You weren't sure yourself, but each time he caught your eye, you felt compelled to continue. I knew that was the right choice. He didn't stop as you were standing at the nose of his shiny car. Thank you for escorting me the whole way. No worries. He stood there silently for a few more seconds, his features tensed as he robotically took the keys out of his pocket. Baxter unlocked the car and opened the door. He didn't get inside. He kept looking at you. His mouth twisted awkwardly.
All right.
Be safe. You hummed in response and remained rooted in place. Baxter's gaze flickered between you and the car. Could you please move off of the street? I wouldn't want to hit you when I pull out. Sure thing. On the sidewalk. Hopping up onto the curb, you bounced on the edge so you could watch him leave. Baxter's jaw dropped in disbelief.
Are you sure?
But you don't need to return to your friends? I can wait to pull out until you've gone inside. I don't mind. No, you can go. Baxter's posture straightened under your unyielding gaze. He folded his arms defensively. What's wrong? Everything's fine, Jules. He'd given up pretending that he was ever going to leave with you watching. Now you were simply at a standstill. Okay, why can't you leave? Finally, he smiled again. Since the jig was up, he wasn't going to feel sorry for it.
To be honest,
It wasn't my intention to leave in the first place. I wanted to get some ice cream. From an ice cream truck is what I mean. Added context flew from his lips the second his initial response hit his own ears. When I dropped you off here yesterday, I remembered this was the general area it covered. I checked online to confirm that was the case, and that it had the same route. The longer he spoke, the more he squared his shoulders. It was as if he needed to reassure himself that he was still a mature adult to counterbalance his desire for ice cream.
so
Since I was already here, I didn't see any reason I couldn't patronize the truck again, so that is why I'm in no rush. Please, don't let me hold you up. I'm sure you're eager to rejoin the others. Ice cream sounds good. He shrugged in an effort to appear nonchalant. He didn't say anything in response, so he began scanning the neighborhood instead. There was no sign of a truck so far.
I see.
How it is. Yeah, I'll text Miranda and let her know I'll be back soon. Baxter carried his fingers through his hair, the corner of his mouth crooked. At this point, it is out of my hands. You know what I'm up to, and it is a public activity. Who am I to say you're not also welcome to visit the neighborhood ice cream truck? Nodding along, you accepted the situation for what it was, awkward and obstinate. So unexpectedly, the two of you looped through the nearby streets, keeping yourselves on alert for any sign of the ice cream truck. Luckily, it didn't take long to locate. The melodious sound of the well-known tune drew you both in, and then it came around a curve. Decked out in faded posters rolling along under the setting sun, it looked like it drove straight out of your memory. I'm pretty sure this is the same background for when we did get the ice cream. But that was a while ago, not as recent as visiting the craft store. If it was the same truck from 5 years ago, that wouldn't surprise you in the slightest.
Huh.
We found it. You caught a brief sparkle in his eye and a hint of a thrill in his voice that instantly caught you off guard. You pushed ahead to flag down the ice cream truck. For a minute, the side window snapped open. Hello, hello! What kind of sweets do you two want today? Baxter stepped even closer, flashing his dazzling grin. Hello, I appreciate you stopping for us. Thank you! Of course, people of all ages love ice cream. It's a little joy that brings us all together. That's very true. I'm loving this. Oh my goodness. Would it be possible to get an ice cream sandwich? Oh, and some napkins too, if possible. Can do. Huh, you still preferred those. Something about that memory made your chest tighten. You weren't quite sad, but the sentiment wasn't happy either. Baxter graciously slid to the side so you could order next. You could feel his curiosity poking at your skin. Shivering, you wished you could simply brush off all of your weird emotions. You pulled yourself together enough to focus. And you? She leaned slightly out of the truck and easily glanced over the menu. It was even more sun-bleached, but the shapes were distinct enough to tell apart, even with the washed-out colors. Ice cream taco. That's what I got last time. Sounds great. After that, you and Baxter paid for your frozen treats. The lady gave a toothy smile. Thank you so much. Alright, give me 1 minute, is what she said before ducking outside. In her absence, neither you nor Baxter uttered a word. The only noise between you was the faint sound of the woman rummaging through her own truck. Then, just as promised, she returned about a single minute later. Baxter retrieved his desired ice cream sandwich and a handful of white paper napkins. The woman extended an arm out to you next, passing your ice cream taco. Thanks! Have a fantastic evening. I'll be enjoying mine much more with this. You're welcome! The woman laughed at his niceties and then latched up the window. You waved as the truck roared to life before puttering along the street. I suppose we should start finding our way back. Yeah. Baxter strolled leisurely along with his free hand in his pocket and the other carefully pinching his treat. You kept up with him, sampling your own frozen dessert. Baxter waited for you to complete your first taste. The corner of his mouth tugged into an all-too-familiar smirk. I see your preferences have remained the same, and that's exactly why I made sure to pick the same thing, because I wanted him to comment on it. Yours too. Yes, some tastes endure longer than others.
What do you think?
Are you enjoying it this time? It's really good.
Glad to hear it.
Baxter visibly brightened at your genuine answer. He returned to his own thoughts after that. It struck you that as long as Baxter was placated with his dessert, he wasn't running off. For the first time in a long, long while, the two of you might actually be able to talk. Why did you become a wedding planner of all things? It fits, but I have no idea how it could have happened. Ah. Baxter held on to your question for several more moments, closed his eyes consideringly. Let's see, I received a degree in business management after all. I always assumed working with fellow employees within a company would be preferable to dealing with the wider public. However, in practice, I found that event planning best suited my strengths. I'm fortunate that thanks to my upbringing, I happen to be well acquainted with formality and what it takes to authentically achieve it for an event. It's a unique kind of direct experience to wield. Additionally, I deal well with the high level of control and detail work one must take in a stressful event. And that's most suited in bursts with different people rather than a long-term position in a consistent group. You can easily get sick of someone who needs everything to be just so. Baxter finally paused to breathe. You could sense his focus trailing across your furrowed brow, and that only made it worse. His appraising response was a barrier rather than an answer. Yeah. My job makes me happy. The ups and downs are worth it. Oh. I enjoy seeing people at their most joyful and knowing that I contributed to making it happen. At least, ideally, they'll be joyful on their wedding day. I've long since realized how straining and unpleasant the whole planning process is. It never seems to matter how much I try to smooth out the process. It all happens in such a frantic flurry, one can scarcely keep up. But when the day comes and if I've done my job right, then the entire event will be an unforgettable moment. And once it's done, it's done.
So,
I believe you can see why this position was a fitting match. Yeah. Why do you only choose rock? Oh, that's an unexpected query. Is it? That's not a normal thing to take such a committed stance on. I've been wondering about it this whole time. You were doing it even back when you were staying in Sunset Bird, weren't you?
You're good.
Perceptive. Truthfully, it's my favorite option out of the bunch. A nice fist, simple, effective. Baxter's free hand tensed into the aforementioned representation of a rock, just long enough for you to see it. Then his fingers loosened. But rather than why I choose rock out of 3, I imagine you're more intrigued in why I only use one in general. That's true. Yeah. Well, I've done it about as long as I can remember. It made the game more enjoyable in my youth. The petty passive decisions that were best suited to be decided with randomness mattered little to me. It was far more amusing to see who would use the advantage they had to win and who would be willing to take the loss and why they seemed to do so. Baxter glanced towards the distant sky. At the bare minimum, I'm not that much of a brat any longer.
To be honest,
As an adult, I use it mainly to get away with not making decisions of my own. Whoever is playing with me has the responsibility to win or lose because what they're up against is preordained. You don't even need to choose which symbol my hand takes. It's easier that way. Oh. But of course, when it comes to work, I absolutely can make decisions. It's only in my personal life where I lack conviction. My mouth is being a pain. So you still dance? Do you still dance, besides helping the couples you planned for?
no.
Not competitively. Actually, I haven't kept up with it as a hobby. These days it only ever comes up with my clientele. His gaze trailed off in the distance. I love dancing, but unfortunately there isn't room for everything. I imagine you must have dealt with similar situations in your adult life by now. He stared straight ahead at the empty road and thought about it. He was right. Adulthood brought hard changes, and yet it seemed impossible to separate dancing and Baxter in your mind. Yeah, I get it. Having said that, I can't complain. There was a rather low chance that my love of dance was going to be utilized in my actual profession, and yet here we are.
Not bad.
Silver linings and all that. Okay, the big question, the important question. Why did you stop talking to me? Why couldn't we stay friends? Baxter slowed under the weight of your words, but his expression remained indecipherable. Your voice shook. None of it makes any sense to me. I've asked myself those questions a number of times. Baxter took a deep and steadying breath, then ran his fingers along the edge of his swooped bangs.
You need to understand.
Jules, I do want to be entirely clear. You are wonderful. Never doubt that. What happened, I do exactly that to everyone who unfortunately crosses my path. The acquaintances I made at college, dancing partners, the friends I had since childhood, my parents, though, that is an entirely different story. The point of the matter is, excluding those I interact with regularly due to work, I have no relations whatsoever. That's simply the way it goes. You found his words incredibly hard to believe. Nothing was simple about his explanation. Baxter cut things off there. He was not willing to deal with that part of himself, but surprisingly, he also didn't take it out on you as he had any other time you'd tried to get personal. The topic just drifted and you let it. It left a truce between you both in that moment, and for the evening, you could make peace with that. These are almost opposites, but in some ways he has changed, in other ways he hasn't. Sometimes you're almost unrecognizable. Baxter's head tilted gradually like he was waiting for some kind of follow-up, but you didn't have one to make.
Really?
How unexpected. I was convinced I hadn't changed in the slightest. I'm an actual resident of California now, and despite living here for nearly a year, I haven't so much as dipped my toes into the ocean. I'm still far too nervous for that. Embarrassingly, I'm not a beach man like Terry. I'm not even the bee man anymore. He calls me Baxter. The former bee man's voice grew quieter. That level of transparency didn't last long. Baxter quickly changed topics, but sadness lingered in his eyes. My taste in night cream hasn't evolved, and neither has my ideas for outings.
Truthfully.
I can say that I've improved some talents over the years and found a less eye-catching sense of style, but for anything meaningful, there's been no growth. He was right in some ways. Baxter was a diamond that showed different facets in the light. If the gem spun, you might not see certain parts anymore, but they were still there. They remained a part of it. Baxter Ward was still the man you met 5 years ago. His lips twisted bitterly, but he fixed that with a bite of ice cream. held the sweetness on his tongue before swallowing. Don't mind me and my ramblings. The two of you continued on your path to Jude and Scott's house, surrounded by the end-of-day ambiance of crickets and distant cars. He stole a glance in his direction. Somehow, Baxter still hadn't finished his child-sized ice cream sandwich. You couldn't help but wonder what was happening inside his head. Since he'd returned, everything came with a thick layer of fog to trudge through. It was only yesterday when Baxter was begging to be anywhere else on the planet than by your side for a little while. And now he's trying to stretch this walk for as long as possible. Part of you understood. Despite the intensity of your problems, being near him was beginning to feel more comfortable again. The burning pain had cooled into a distant warmth, like a scorching noon sun easing into sunset. Was it because of him, or because of you? Were you both doing something? Would any of this even matter by the day after tomorrow? Did it even matter right now? Time had run out to say anything else. Baxter plopped the last bite of his treat into his mouth and crumpled the wrapper up. He was finished with this. Baxter tidied himself as well as he could with the cheap paper napkins. He didn't use them all, and offered the remaining ones to you. Yeah, thanks. You stashed the napkins in your pocket. Baxter's amiable smile didn't change.
Thank you.
For accompanying me, Jules. As we can both see, my car is right over there. I won't keep you any longer. Good luck with the centerpieces. I'm sure they'll turn out wonderfully. I hope so. Bye, Baxter. See you later. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Well, yes, not yeah. He doesn't say yeah, he says yes. He got into his vehicle for real and was gone again. After an exceedingly long break to see him out, you returned to the house. The door unlocked with a twist of your wrist. The sight earned a grateful sigh. It was a lucky gift of fate that the front door was left open. No one had checked since you were gone. You were able to slip inside and rejoin the others without any extra weirdness. Or at least that's what you thought. Miranda, Jude, and Scott stopped what they were doing to stare at your entrance. They must have heard the door close. Awkward.
Hey.
Jude at least didn't have an interest in asking you probing questions. He punctuated his greeting with an easy smile and resumed the silk flower arrangements.
Wow.
The missing jewels has magically reappeared. Were you talking to Baxter? Pulled his arms across his chest and watched you with an honest curiosity. Unlike his soon-to-be husband, he couldn't let just the... Okay, that's a typo. Couldn't just let the delay slide without mention. Yeah, we talked for a little while. We were catching up. Miranda's shoulders relaxed hearing that news. After experiencing the impact of that summer firsthand, she understood the magnitude of that step.
Really?
You seriously did know him before? I did and do, sort of. He's still Baxter Ward. Letting that information sink in, Scott removed his glasses and idly cleaned the lenses on the end of his shirt. He slipped them on and then sheepishly scratched the top of his head. I know this Baxter stuff is old news for you, but I'm finding it hard to imagine. Sorry, that's probably because you're the only one of us who never met him before now. What? Huh? That comment was finally enough to pique Jude's curiosity. Miranda snickered as Jude put the silk flowers down. That comment... Oh. When did I meet him? Well, you didn't talk to him, but had to have seen him.
No clue.
That? I'm more confused. Remember my 19th birthday party? He was there. Your 19th birthday? Yes, he wasn't there as a guest. Baxter was one of the main people who put the whole party together. Jude's brow pinched and he gazed into the distance at nothing in particular, searching the recesses of his mind. At last, the spark behind his eyes brought him back to the present. I remember one strange Jude, the edgy kid who kept messing with the chocolate fountain. Why was he there? That's the real question. Your grin stretched ear to ear, hearing Jude's recollection of Baxter. How typical of him. Somehow seeing a strange monochrome man at his little sister's party didn't prompt him to ask any questions then. It was never too late, though. That was Baxter.
What?
That was Baxter? With the eyeballs? Because the pattern on his shirt does look like eyeballs. Jude repeated the words slowly. He needed a moment to process. Yes. Then he dropped, holding like a chair. You'd never heard him laugh that hard. He was shaking. In contrast, Scott kept his composure. The longer Jude continued, the higher Scott's brows raised. What do you mean with the eyeballs? What's wrong with his eyeballs? The Eckert siblings were both spewing with laughter at that point. You could only hope Baxter drove far enough away to not be able to hear it himself. Nothing. There's never been anything wrong with Baxter's eyeballs, I think. Poor Scott. He never experienced Baxter's black and white glory in person. It wasn't something any of you could convey with mere words. Phew. Jude pressed his palm to his heart and leaned against the couch cushions until his breathing calmed down. Scott, you had to be there. He looked like a fool. Let's not hold it against him.
Guess so.
I'll take your word for it. Jude scooted to the edge of the seat and grinned widely at him. He gave Scott's leg a pat.
On it.
Time to get to work. Flowers won't arrange themselves. Scott bobbed his head, still in the daze, and the three of them got you up to speed with their crafting circle. But yeah, that's definitely seems like something Jude would notice, is that the pattern on Baxter's shirt looked like eyeballs. The rest of the evening and well into the night was spent joking, sharing stories, and creating beautiful masterpieces. At one point, a new message in the group chat caught everyone's attention. Baxter asked for confirmation that tomorrow would be the big day out with the couple. You weren't sure if it was only in your head, but Baxter's phrasing felt a little more friendly than his prior updates. He even used the thumbs up emoji. That was completely new. You went to bed and hoped this might be a turning point. Things were coming together. That next day, you had the morning, afternoon, and evening to yourself. Jude and Scott were gone until late. However, they managed to keep everyone in the loop while they were gone. The group chat buzzed with various updates throughout their adventures. There was a glimpse of the suit stores they were checking out, the event room they used for practicing dancing, and pictures of the three of them presumably taking a break. Jude and Scott were thrilled in the photos. Even the occasional Baxter in the background seemed pleased. And based on the updates, that wasn't for show. The wedding plans were genuinely going well. Meanwhile, you had your feet up, resting and recharging for the big event. You imagined Terry and Miranda spent their day off similarly. After all that hard work, the grand payoff was almost here. There was only one meeting left with the planner ahead of tomorrow. Miranda and Terry arrived at the house not long after you finished dinner. Just as things were talked about before, everybody was invited to Jude and Scott's place rather than the office. It wasn't long before the fiancés and the wedding planners strolled in with their spirits high. Almost everyone got settled comfortably in the living room. Jude and Scott tiredly sank into one end of the couch, while Terry sat at the other. Miranda folded her leg and sat on the arm of the couch, leaning into Terry. He plopped down on the room's other plush chair. Baxter, though, didn't pull a chair aside or sit down anywhere. Instead, he remained standing, holding his notebook, waiting for his moment to begin the meeting. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone here. You've handled this stressful schedule commendably.
Bravo.
It's been an excellent working with a party planning committee such as yourselves. Baxter bowed his head politely. It was clear he was trying to maintain the wall of formality with his role as the wedding planner, but his earnest tone gave him away. Baxter meant what he said from the heart. Before comments could be made, he changed gears and tapped the pad of his finger to his chin. My main concern at this point is simply the partygoers enjoying themselves the day of. Though there are a few remaining details we need to get out of the way before I leave, it's minor. The room buzzed with excitement. The fruits of your hard labor were almost ready to feast on. Miranda reached across Terry on the couch and gave her brother a big high five.
So great.
I can't believe we made it in one piece.
Seriously.
You and me both. Oh gosh, they do look like siblings. Even their faces have similar shapes. I mean, it's easy to get like hair and eye color, and they even have similar hairstyles. But you know, he's got brown eyes, she's got purple, and her hair is brown. His hair is blackish brown, but they have the same skin tone, and he even has freckles like she does. Though of course Miranda has more. But the shape of the face, that's a great detail. They both laughed heartily and offered Scott a high five next. Terry, meanwhile, dropped his chin on Miranda's spine with a quiet hum. She squealed at the sudden contact and missed Scott's hand. Scott immediately shifted from the high five to making sure Miranda wouldn't lose her balance. Baxter cleared his throat to regain the room's attention. His soft expression grew more focused.
Is that fine?
As I said before, we have a few remaining details to sort out. May I? Knock yourself out, but hurry before Randy knocks somebody upside the head. I'm fine, Jude. Thank you for being concerned. Yep, such a big brother. Miranda resumed her seat perched on the arm of the couch, and Terry signaled Baxter to start with a thumbs up. So we had quite a productive day, as you might have seen. Scott sat straighter in his seat and nodded confidently. He couldn't hold his thoughts a second longer. We got the suits. They're super. Saul, he was the man who assisted us at the store, was a massive help finding us options that worked splendidly off the rack. And Baxter showed us some steps. He sheepishly rubbed the side of his neck and glanced at his husband-to-be. Jude playfully bumped his shoulder into Scott's side. Guess we're gonna have a slow dance.
Exciting.
It'll be delightful. Oh, you know it. From there, the conversation kept rolling. You, Terry, and Miranda listened while the couple confirmed the final touches of their wedding ceremony. And I have some additional good news to share. It's an update new to the whole room. Xavier sent me their progress on the cake. It's finished and will be delivered tomorrow as requested. Would any of you like to see the photos?
Yes.
Please! Sure. In a flash, Baxter had his phone out and tapped the screen. He flipped it and walked the picture around the room for his audience. The cake on display was 3 tiers, and the white frosting had rows of lines textured all the way down. Pipe, leaves, and flowers were dotted about as accents. It was understated and stylish. It's so pretty! We'll actually have a cake this well made for the reception. I seriously appreciate what they did for us. The baker did good. While the couple's words were complimentary, honest praise for an objectively nice piece, there was a problem. It was obvious the cake was the result of their former lack of synergy. The final result was as finished and not ugly and generic as Jude had insisted upon. Could have been a random stock photo Baxter found online. Scott was amazed by the craftsmanship regardless, but seeing it for himself, Jude slouched lower into the couch. It will taste as nice as it looks. Xavier's gifted in the kitchen. Great. Some noticeable creases remained in Jude's brows, but still he managed to smile. Baxter nodded and no one had anything else to add about the cake. The conversation pivoted away. Baxter ran through the ceremony procedure piece by piece and the intended times for every moment. Much of it was familiar information at this point, however, it was crucial to have it all straight.
Now,
I have one last question for the couple. As a tradition where the two being married choose not to see each other or not to have any communication whatsoever before the ceremony, would that be something you'd want to consider? I can arrange separate areas for each of you to get ready. The men frowned nearly simultaneously. They gave each other a long, silent stare. It would be hard not seeing or talking to each other at all. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And what if there's a problem? Scott's frown deepened. He lifted his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. We've got to see the thing through together. Beaming, Scott hooked an arm around Jude's shoulders and pulled him close. He whispered in his fiance's ear. We're gonna throw a great wedding. I know that. Are you both feeling prepared to get married then?
Yeah.
We're raring to go. Jude rested his cheek on Scott's shoulder and let out a gentle sigh. The peaceful look on his face splintered. Yeah. Very good. There was something in Baxter's tone that caught your attention. His gaze lingered on Jude. Whatever he was thinking, he kept it to himself.
it's settled.
No, it wasn't. You could read it on him like a billboard. I believe this means we can call an end to our final meeting.
Amazing.
Wow. Woo! The couple got to their feet and gave their heartfelt thanks and goodbyes. Miranda hopped off the armrest and pulled Terry along too. Raising a brow, you watched on as Baxter actually left. Jude and Scott walked him to the door. You followed them. Baxter left with one last farewell and the door was shut. The day had wrapped up nicely. Everyone had done as best as they could. Yet, regardless of all the signs, you remained unconvinced that Baxter had finished his planning. From there, Jude and Scott rallied themselves into one last cleaning session before bed. They began putting their house into some semblance of order. They were unstoppable. Scott pivoted and you sidestepped out of his way. In the living room, Terry and Miranda were settled on the cushions of the couch together, watching something quietly on one of their phones. They would be going home soon, and the last thing you wanted was to get in the way of either power couple. But a guiding light came in the form of your phone jingling to life. Lo and behold, it was Baxter Ward, and this text wasn't for the group chat. He sent it to you directly. What? I'm sorry for messaging you out of the blue, but could you do me a favor? I need Jude to meet me outside. I'm still here. I want to speak with him. Can you convince him to do that? I'm worried he might not listen, or he'd tell Scott if I text him directly. Oh, we're gonna answer him. Pepe Le Pew is up to no good again. It's not as bad as you assume. You're welcome to join us for the conversation, but it's urgent that I speak to him now. You were forming an idea where this was about to go as you slipped your phone into your pocket and got to work. Scott had moved into the living room, so that meant Jude was alone in the kitchen. Perfect timing. Fortunately, he was too absorbed. Wrong button. He was too absorbed in his task to notice you sneaking past. Jude stood at the sink, humming a quiet tune. He was already making a dent in washing the dishes that had piled up from earlier in the day. Hey, Jude. Hey. Sorry. I grew up listening to the Beatles because my dad was a fan, and my mom was kind of a fan by osmosis because her older sisters were huge Beatles fans. But anyway, yeah, there's a Beatles song called Hey Jude, and that's where my brain went. Sup? He didn't take his eyes off the sun. You hung back in the doorway and made sure that you were alone before inching closer. Before anything else, could we move this conversation outside of the house? He looked at you then. But he put the bowl he'd finished scrubbing on the drying rack and then dried his hands.
Sure.
Lead the way. Thanks. The two of you were halfway through the house, almost home free, when Jude startled you by speaking. You stopped dead in your tracks. This is about Baxter, right? How did you blow it that bad? You're about to blurt it out, but then Jude crossed his arms and his expression morphed into something you'd expect more from Liz. Oh. His older sibling senses had tingling. Jude wasn't onto what was really happening. He thought you wanted to talk about Baxter from your own personal angle. Your conflicting emotions must have been dancing across your face because Jude dropped the protective expression for a sympathetic one.
It's good.
You can tell me about it outside. Bullet dodged. Without exchanging another word, you led him out the front door. Jude froze only a couple feet outside his doorstep. His head snapped to the side, catching where Baxter was leaning against the side of the house.
Hello.
Jude, thank you so much for your help, Jules. Baxter moved off the wall and readjusted his jacket. He grinned widely and it sent a shiver down your spine. There was something about arranging a confrontation at night with an unsuspecting Mark and a man in a well-tailored suit that made you feel you were now an accomplice to a crime. Local hero falls into a trap set by a devious monochromatic supervillain and all that. You coughed and turned away to regain your composure. Baxter's master plan was going to be in Jude's favor, obviously. Not that he knew that. Jude's gaze flickered between his two captors. What's going on? That's exactly what I wanted to ask. You didn't appear particularly thrilled at the end of our meeting. Jude's uneasiness vanished and was replaced by a clenched jaw. It's all good, Baxter.
Come on.
You'll have to do better than that. I don't believe either of us are convinced.
It's fine.
Things are as good as they're gonna be. Baxter sighed at the note of hurt in Jude's voice. He let his hands sink into his pockets. We can't even begin to find a solution or a compromise if you're not willing to discuss the issue. Jude tapped his foot anxiously. He hoped someone would speak, but the two of you were waiting for him. It's way too late.
I understand.
I believe I have an idea what this is about, but I could be wrong. Please, try me. Jude opened his mouth, hesitated, and closed it. He glanced away and scrubbed his fingers roughly through his hair.
Why not?
You're the wedding planner. He let out a defeated sigh and guiltily lifted his gaze. The problem is that cake. I screwed it up. It's our wedding, our chance to do whatever we want. I didn't let him or me do that. We only needed to talk for 15 minutes about a design and flavors and shit. It all would have been good. But me thinking that now doesn't matter. There's nothing we can do. The tirade was the longest you'd ever heard Jude speak all in a row, and the angriest. Baxter listened sympathetically. When he was certain Jude had said his piece, Baxter took a turn.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes, the cake is finished. Xavier wouldn't be capable of overhauling the design of an entire wedding cake at the last hour. Even adding new decorations isn't particularly feasible. And I can't recommend you doing anything to the cake without discussing it with Scott first, regardless. That's why I kept my mouth shut. The baker did what I wanted, but that cake is always going to be something I regret. Jude squeezed his eyelids shut as he admitted that aloud. Baxter's expression tightened and he exhaled through his nose. Jude, have you perhaps heard of the concept of a groom's cake? Jude cracked an intrigued eye open. He studied Baxter cautiously.
No clue.
What's that? Well, wedding cakes are often tailored to only one half of the couple's taste. There is the cliche of a bride picking out a dream wedding and a groom being left out of the process entirely for a reason. The situation can certainly apply to any gender couple, and sometimes it isn't a problem for a pair. In this case, you could say the wedding cake was more your choice than Scott's. Now, the basic concept is that you have the beautiful classic wedding cake on multiple tiers under a stated coloring scheme as the main piece. Then there's a second cake that is smaller and often far more themed and designed. something potentially showcasing a hobby, a sports-themed cake, for example, or a video game-themed cake. It's meant to be to the preference of the person who didn't get their say before. That way, both people in the relationship get what they like. And adding a groom's cake makes for a much better surprise than redoing a piece that was already agreed on. Are you for real? That's a thing? I didn't know that was a thing, but it does make sense. I have no idea what the process was like for my parents because, of course, I wasn't born yet. I mean, some kids do get to attend their parents' weddings, but that's neither here nor there. But it does make sense because usually the wedding itself is all the bride. The groom basically picks the wedding, makes arrangements for the honeymoon and stuff. So I can see it.
Absolutely.
It is. Scott and I met playing games online. Could we get something to celebrate that? A video game themed cake? Your eyes flickered back and forth between them. Jude's hopeful excitement contrasted with Baxter's strained smile in a painfully humorous way. Baxter pinched the bridge of his nose. We can't ask Xavier to create an entirely new cake on short notice. While we might be able to find a pre-made one with video game accents, it would be more young child's birthday cake than most important event of your life, groom's cake. Jude began to visibly deflate, and that was the apex of this final meeting. Baxter had drawn him outside, got him to open up on his feelings. Everything had proceeded as he'd requested, and it was as expected. Baxter knew this was about the cake, so he waited to hear why. The hand still in Baxter's pockets had morphed into fists, and his arms were pulling down so tensely his sleeves might have ripped off the shoulders, if he was in something of lesser quality. By the looks of it, Jude wasn't the only one questioning his various choices, but of course Baxter Ward was good friends with bad ideas. If you're truly desperate, I could do it. I could make a groom's cake. Jude's jaw went from a slight dip to a drop. Baxter had done a lot in the past few days, but he always remained within the bounds of his job. Even going to pick up and drop off the centerpiece supplies could be considered a part of the process if you had an especially involved planner. However, making a groom's cake the night before the wedding was definitely not how any of this worked. Baxter Ward was taking a flying leap past the line of professional courtesy.
What?
You make cakes? Jude slowly articulated through his shock. Baxter nervously blew at the edge of his swoop bangs.
Not professionally, no.
I think that was actually Jude's voice actor? It won't taste as good as the wedding cake. I can curb that expectation right now. I'll have to use a box mix, and it won't be the true 3D carved shape. That's something better left to the pros. However, I can manage to create a cake that fits the bill better than a sheet cake with some plastic decorations stuck in it. I could use a stencil to make it look like a controller and frost it so. And I do have some experience baking for events. I did help to make the cupcakes for Miranda's 19th birthday. Not just the chocolate fountain. Baxter blinked and then scratched the side of his neck. He let out an awkward chuckle at that bit of infamy preceding him.
Yes.
I did do a touch more than provide the chocolate fountain.
Done.
Well, hell, if you can do it, do it. That would be, I don't know how I could make it up to you. Don't allow the stress of having the perfect wedding ruin the experience. That's all I asked for. Oh, and don't smash any of the first or second cake into Scott's face as a surprise. Despite Baxter's lighthearted teasing, Jude continued to stare at him, astonished.
Thanks.
Dude, thanks.
You're welcome.
And now I can comfortably say that we're all set for tomorrow. You need all the rest you can get before morning, so take it easy tonight. I'll be going now. They were serious. Baxter was about to make a themed groom's cake the night before the wedding he was planning. It's so ridiculous, and he absolutely needed someone to watch out for him. You could almost laugh. Still, there was no way you were going to let him walk away alone. I'll help you. Amazing! Baxter shot an unimpressed glance at Jude, and then he tried to rein his emotions in.
It's...
Jules, I promise I can do this on my own. This was my choice. Don't try to talk me out of it. Jude wouldn't let Scott do everything himself, and I'm not going to let you get overwhelmed trying to do everything on your own either. You need help. One sec. My room is getting stuffy. I need to turn on my fan. I was hoping we would get to bake with Baxter again. So let's see. We went bowling again. We had ice cream together again and even got the same ice cream. And now we're gonna bake with him again. Oh, and we also went shopping for craft supplies together. So there's a lot of callbacks to the Baxter moments. Baxter's hesitancy and discomfort was evident. He gave the collar of his shirt a light tug.
Is that
I'll be
fine?
baking in my apartment. Is that fine with you? Uh-huh. I'll go with you. He still didn't quite believe his ears, but he also didn't question your actions any further. Fine. Fine. I'm grateful for your assistance.
Oh,
Thanks again. Oh, I'll text you a picture of Scott's favorite controller, and for Jules, I'll bullshit some reason you're gone. Ah, yes, that'd be excellent. Jude's forethought got Baxter to refocus on the situation. He scratched the side of his cheek. But before we go, I have one more question for you, Jude. Shoot. Do you have a cake mix and either pre-made frosting or powdered sugar? Oh, and perhaps food coloring? Ah, and a sheet pan too if you have that. He far exceeded the limits of one more question and managed to tell you both indirectly that he needed literally everything other than the eggs and oil. Baxter was shameless about his request and simply shrugged instead.
Honestly.
I don't have any baking supplies. I figured it'd save us a trip to the store and fret over a brand like if we could use ingredients from your own kitchen. Of course you don't have baking supplies. Jude tipped his head back and let out a deep laugh. He rocked forward and wiped a tear from his eye.
got it.
You probably have some stuff you can use. Wait here. Jude jogged to the house, leaving you and Baxter there on the driveway. He didn't even bother closing the door, so the light from inside fell between you. Neither of you uttered a single word. Jude would return any minute, and you'd have the whole night to say anything either of you wanted. A couple of minutes later, Jude rushed back out with his arms full. He passed Baxter a sheet cake pan stacked with supplies, carrot cake mix, 2 containers of cheesecake frosting, and a box with red, green, blue, and yellow food coloring. Scott prefers this way more than chocolate and vanilla. We can do a lot with this.
Perfect.
It is going to work. Good night, Jude. I'll take care of this and Jules. You have nothing to worry about. And I'll take care of him. Baxter's mouth perked into a familiar smirk. Jude shook his head and waved you both off.
All right.
We're on the clock. Drive safe. And with that, you and Baxter split from the group for one final pre-wedding mission. You hurried across the street and climbed into his car. Soft music poured out of his car stereo in lieu of conversation, fitting itself in as the ambient backbeat on the drive to Prism Vista. Street lights lined the freeway and cars rushed by with their own purposeful missions. Yours was just as important. Baking cakes was no small matter. Baking a cake at all, at, well, Baxter's, it was a novelty, all things considered. There had been times when you went into the condo rented out for Baxter by the elusive Mr. and Mrs. Ward, on top of the occasions when you'd been to his office to help with the wedding planning. Now, they were going to be treading new ground in his day-to-day space. There was something that felt impossibly personal about it. Definitely. That kind of thing wasn't even an option that summer. His family lived out of state and he was going to college across the country. You wondered if 19-year-old Baxter would have invited you into his home or dorm room if he could have. It didn't take long to come up with an answer. You had a feeling that he would have avoided it. Monochrome Baxter would be in a heap of trouble if the people he wanted to hide from knew where he lived. So what made this Baxter different from that one? He said 5 years to mature? The veneer of professionalism colored your shared silence, but the air wasn't taut with tension so much as buzzing with anticipation. Eventually, Baxter pulled into the parking lot of a high-rise apartment building and with some fumbling, managed to get to the doorway with some of the cake materials in his arm. He entrusted the cake mix arguably the most important part to you. Interesting. This is clearly the lobby area. It suits monochrome Baxter. As Baxter gestured to the modern decor in the main lobby, you passed through and guided you both toward a polished chrome elevator. His fingerprints were left behind on the shining buttons. The elevator took you to the 11th floor, where you followed Baxter to the end of the hall and into his apartment. Shrugging the supplies more to one side, he unlocked the door and held it open. After you, Jules. Baxter was always a gentleman when it came to situations like this, so you offered a quick thanks before crossing the threshold into his apartment. Whatever you'd expected, it wasn't this. The apartment opened up into a chic living room embellished with tons of oranges, blues, and grays. This is pretty. Interesting that it's oranges and blues, because those are complementary colors. Because you get orange mixed red and yellow. The other two primary colors besides blue. That's a beautiful view of the city. Silvery curtains were drawn aside, and the metal on some of the furniture gleamed with a similar polish to those in the lobby. Distant light from the dayscape shone in from the huge floor-to-ceiling glass doors that opened onto a balcony. From here, it felt as though Prism Vista stretched impossibly far. It was at this moment that you were reminded how incredibly small Sunset Berg was by comparison. Baxter's voice grounded you again as he entered from your periphery, hands newly emptied of the baking supplies. You must have put them down when you were looking around.
What do you
So,
think?
this is my home. There's a whisper of a thrill in that question. I can see how this is your place. Baxter's smile widened in margin as his hand came to rest on the back of one of his armchairs.
Thank you.
It was worth the time and energy to decorate it then.
You're too kind.
Now, Jules, I must thank you for volunteering your services in this exceedingly thought out and wholly inconvenient task. Not many would. I do believe we should get started before it gets any later, He rounded the couch, slipping off his jacket before tossing it with reckless abandon over his blue armchair. He gently tugged at the edges of his sleeves, inspecting them for some non-existent dust. I will hang that up correctly later. Oh, we're gonna go for it. Talk about a great view. He leveled a look at you, one eyebrow raised. You'd gotten him nervous. As much as I appreciate the encouragement, there are other matters that need your keen attention. I solemnly swear I will do my best. It won't be easy. Excellent.
Very well.
Let's go over what we'll need to do in a semi-flexible list of steps. He passed you on his way to the small kitchen unit, gesturing every so often to where he placed things as he reviewed. We'll need to first preheat the oven, then prepare the batter and the pan, and bake it. After, we'll have to make a stencil, dye the frosting, take the cake out, and let it cool, then cut the cake to the approximate shape of a controller using a stencil. He took a cursory glance at the tub of frosting you'd been allotted before ultimately picking it up and checking the bottom of it for an expiration date. Finally, we'll apply a base coat of frosting, add detailing, and pack it up so that it's ready to simply be taken to the venue in the morning. Baxter returned to the frosting to the counter he'd taken it from.
Well,
That doesn't sound impossible. The grimace that suddenly crossed his features betrayed his disbelief. It might not have been impossible, but that didn't mean it wouldn't be difficult. Changing the frosting tin for the cake mix, he scanned the directions on the back before reaching for the oven's digital screen to set the temperature. 350 degrees, the appliance beeped with recognition, and its interior lights flickered on in warning. So it begins. Tucking his nails beneath the box top, Baxter worked at opening it. The world wasn't going to give him a single break, however, and it refused to come apart cleanly. Of course. Only the paper on top came off, while the rest of the flap remained glued down. Baxter had to tediously tear at the cardboard. Scraps were abandoned on a tabletop little by little while he searched for a bowl and other utensils.
to be honest,
You may be surprised to hear this, Jules. I am quite the skilled cook these days. I've had a short life's worth of delicious and interesting meals. There is something quite satisfying about making it for myself as opposed to going to a restaurant. He hummed as he pressed his hands into the box, the top of it eventually splitting open to unveil its contents to him. Baxter took out the pouch of mix and examined what remained of the box once more. I unfortunately don't have any of those offerings for you today. This is just to say that the first and last I baked a dessert or decorated anything was with you for Miranda's birthday. Birthday? Oh yeah. I can talk, I promise. He chuckled as he used scissors to get the plastic baggie open before he emptied its succinct contents into the bowl you scratched at. I do hope these savory skills are transferable. It should be interesting either way. You never made a cake again? That night had been semi-disastrous, so you weren't particularly surprised that I never repeated it. Except he still suggested his confectionery services today. Honestly, it seemed like him to do something like that. Baxter was always the type topper to do whatever was needed of him, even if it was something he wasn't prepared for. It was funny how it was always the Eckert siblings who managed to get him mixing batter.
So?
What about you? What about me? Have you done much cake decorating in recent years? Gotten plenty of chances to decorate. I'm a lot better.
Excellent.
The decor will make up for the box cake taste. You head to the sink to wash your hands. There was no certainty that the cake would turn out as 100% perfect, but 70% was okay. Even 10% would be great if it makes Scott happy. Let's get started. Without further discussion, with a massive list of things still be done, you and Baxter set to work preparing the cake. That went without a hitch, shockingly. It was only oil, water, and an egg into the pre-mixed dry ingredients, but the track record for things going wrong was impressive. Once that was combined, you lined the pan with parchment paper and Baxter poured in the batter. By the time you'd rinsed out the bowl, the oven beeped. Baxter, after checking to make sure the temperature was right at least twice, slid the pan into the oven. Set a timer for half an hour in accordance with the directions. Now, my family, when we do birthday cakes, we usually get box mixes because it's easier than trying to figure out what a recipe. So that all actually sounds about right, just from past experience.
I can do that.
It might take a bit longer than that. I'll keep an eye on it. The last thing we need is a burnt cake. Right. Suddenly, all that was left to do was wait. Baxter checked his phone for messages as he leaned against the counter. Aha! A grin spread across his features and his fingers flew across the screen to send up a quick text. Peering from around his side, he managed to sneak a peek at a few pictures of Scott's game controller. It had a thankfully uncomplicated design, bright red with a handful of black and white buttons and joysticks. The shape looked like it would be pretty easy to replicate. It was wide and bulky. A sheet cake could be carved to the general shape for sure. With this, I'll prepare a stencil. Keep an eye on the cake for us, would you? Half serious and half joking about the cake, he departed the kitchen. Your heart fluttered when he said us, even though you know it was purely innocuous. This was a project between the two of you. So, us was an obligation from the well-meaning Baxter, who gave credit where credit was due. As commanded, you brought your nose up to the warm oven and peered inside. Since the cake was hidden behind a tinted window, you couldn't exactly register how it was doing. You couldn't smell anything either. That you'd take. No scent meant no smoke. Overall, it seemed like the cake was baking. Nothing seemed off or even lopsided. Maybe. Hopefully. Apologies for having kept you waiting. Baxter returned with a plain sheet of printer paper and a pencil. I'm afraid I don't have a printer, so we'll have to freehand it. That prompted the question as to why he had the printer paper in his house then. He didn't give that question room to rise. Hopefully, unlike the cake, Baxter set supplies down and leaned over his phone, brows furrowed with a concerted effort. The tip of the pencil had yet to meet the page. Baxter hesitated as he drew his screen closer to double-check the shape, before finally committing graphite to light. He slowly drew out the lower curve of the controller, stopping ever so often and leaving darker lines at certain points. When he closed out the completed shape, it was completely lopsided. The first half looked quite good, the other half, however, was short and narrow. He brought it all in too soon.
Well,
I wasn't expecting it to be perfect on my first try. He chuckled, running his fingers through his hair. Baxter started erasing his failure before sighing loudly. Giving up, Baxter simply turned the page over onto its other side. He sketched the controller again, to no more success than the last. He set the pencil down. There was no attempt to erase anything. Baxter was already turning to the other half of the apartment. I'll get another sheet, or rather an entire stack would be best. He stood up, digits resting against the nape of his neck. Baxter's eyes met yours. His tense smile faltered a bit, as the bright brown of his irises flicked straight down to the ground. You don't need to worry. I'm not quite as sensitive as I used to be about mistakes. I will survive this, bright as wounded as it may be from these trials and tribulations. Remember how upset he was that your first drink date with him went, badly, in his opinion? His tone was joking and light, but you couldn't help finding it unfunny. The Baxter you'd known agonized over missteps far more than the average person. In the last few days you spent with him, you'd seen he had actually grown as a person in some ways. I could get you a pencil and bring even more paper to share if you'd like to give it a try as well. Two heads are better than one, so it wouldn't hurt to try. Yeah, if you could, I'd appreciate it.
certainly.
Baxter nodded, disappearing back to whence he came. Moments later, he returned through the hall with an inch-thick stack of paper, as he'd said he would, and with a second pencil in tow, too. Reassuming his Herculean task, Baxter took another sheet of paper off the top and hoped that the third time would be the charm. After taking another glance at the reference photo, you got right to work yourself. It took you both a few tries to get something perfect. Perfect enough for the situation, at least. You managed to come out with the most usable stencil first.
You're good.
Thank you, Jules. You've saved me the burden of buying more paper this late in the evening, the night before a wedding I'm supposed to be the planner for. He laughed, his tone softening as he said your name. It was a stencil. You hadn't taken the time for any particular details. Still, Baxter seemed so relieved. Luckily, that was less painful than I assumed. You didn't miss the marked sarcasm that snuck into his words, despite his better efforts. We can prepare the colors. Perusing the counter for what remained of the supplies, he picked up the box of food coloring. It's seen used before, judging by the inky smears left behind on Baxter's fingertips as he gathered the few bottles he needed, every color except for yellow. As he worked through them, he pried open the little tubs of frosting.
All right.
Nearly all of that will be red. Let's save some for the white. Off-white, I suppose. Cream cheese can only look so pale, and a little extra for the black parts. I do believe mixing blue, green, and red will produce black. After closing his texts of the photos, he searched online for how to make black frosting. Yes, that appears to be the way. Adding cocoa powder will make an even richer black. Oh, clever. I don't have any. He shot a glance in your direction, lips pressed into a thin smile. As a wise man once said, of course you don't have baking supplies. 2 little bowls were filled with several messy spoonfuls of frosting. The rest was popped into a larger salad bowl, which Baxter couldn't help noting as ironic. Dye was added drop by drop, building up the shades as you went. The red bottle was squeezed nearly empty to reach a true red that matched the controller. Your white frosting was the only one that remained unblemished. What precious little red remained was reserved for the black, which ended up a dismal gray. A harsh thing to think about a color that was, well, somewhat somber by nature. Still, Baxter didn't want to push the dye any further at the risk of ruining its taste or consistency.
It's...
Few people are likely to know black is more of a... Sort of trailed into nothing, eyes half-lidded as he stared at the frosting with newfound recognition. Baxter? His face turned to you, taut with an unspoken emotion. Baxter unthinkingly reached out to swipe a bit of leftover frosting stuck to your fingers, stopping himself before he did. Oh, right, nothing. This will work fine for our purposes. He went to withdraw a saran wrap from one of the kitchen drawers and proceeded to hastily wrap up the 3 bowls before finally putting them away in his fridge. With the frosting and stencil taken care of, the two of you busied yourselves cleaning the counter and tossing the refuse, pieces of cardboard, a hollowed-out frosting tub, and failed controller outlines. Baxter even got a chance to properly hang his jacket. The timer ran out as he continued with minor chores. You'd moved on to cutting out the stencil using the same scissors Baxter set aside from his adventures in opening the cake mix box. Baxter handled the cake. Toothpick test was done and came out clean. It was time for your treat to chill inside the freezer until it was set enough to be decorated. Outside of that, everything that needed to be done had more or less been done. It was odd how familiar the empty space between a finished cake and an almost finished one felt. Then again, this had all happened before, hadn't it? You weren't left lingering in that quiet thought for long. Baxter had a plan for what to do next, of sorts. It amounted to pressing against the fridge with his body almost perfectly parallel to it and staying that way. Before he could ask, he sighed deeply, as if the air he had stored in his body was being sucked out of him by the devious appliance he had become attached to. I cannot believe I am doing this again. Gonna get another irresponsible drink? I wish I had a drink, but as you say, that'd be unprofessional. Baxter's eyes closed as he languished there in relative silence. The veneer of him being a put-together wedding planner had been chipping since before you walked through his front door. It was entirely absent then. Who he actually was had been left exposed. Finally! Finally! You wanted to talk to him, the Baxter before you. I was mean to ask, but what made you volunteer to do this? Why'd you mention groom's cakes in the first place? It's pretty funny, you know? We're bending over backwards, making their wedding as perfect as possible after being so sure it wouldn't last. I will never live that down, I'm sure. Yes. Well, the irony isn't lost on me. This isn't how my work typically goes. I hope you realize. Even I can admit I wouldn't do this for every client. And somehow that makes this worse. It's painfully obvious I have some personal investment, enough to merit this. Gestured vaguely to the kitchen, then to you.
I swear.
More than I intended to be, more than I ought to have. His arm relaxed, falling uselessly to his side. Finally, Baxter pried himself off the appliance, though he didn't remove himself from it for long. Instead, his black hair tousled as he flipped around so the back of his head was against it. His gaze shifted to the ceiling, suddenly fascinated by the next floor up. I wouldn't have done this if you weren't here. Oh. Baxter closed his eyes, sighing deeply as he continued. Even though Miranda was the client's sister, he said client in a way that made Jude sound clerical, that detached him from knowing him, Miranda, or Scott as actual people. I wouldn't have offered. It'd be overreaching to do as much as I have. I've gone beyond the line of pure... Why do I keep doing that? Beyond the line of pure professionalism more than once already. The cake is the icing on the top. Why did you do it then if you're so worried? And what do I have to do with it? The question made him stop in his tracks. His confession came, uncharacteristically, with much thought on how it'd be received. Now he needed to explain himself. You'll have some explaining to do, Baxter. Well, naturally it's against my better judgment to make anyone uncomfortable.
Of course.
In such a tight spot, Jude wouldn't have questioned any help he was offered. But what would Miranda have thought? And Terry as well. Some strange man they knew long ago was getting that personally involved in his situation. I wouldn't have crossed that line no matter how much sympathy I had for Jude's position. Miranda and Terry had been your friends for years. You were certain Baxter was wrong about his assumption. Whether or not Baxter had prior experience with those two, there was no way they would judge him poorly for caring about someone, especially when it was for Jude and Scott. Baxter wasn't finished, however, and you weren't going to interrupt. No, he's finally opened up. We are going to let him finish his piece. This is what we've been waiting for. So, where did my confidence come from? Very simply, I thought you would understand. That I had good intentions, that the odd lengths I went to was merely how I am, that it was okay to let me be involved. If you did understand, everyone else would as well. Oh. His answer fell like a rock into still water. He seemed smaller, younger now, like he was still 19.
Truthfully.
As soon as it comes to you, it appears my reason goes out the window, along with much of my dignity. He snorted derisively and didn't know where to look. The tiles above had lost their appeal. But that is how it is. I want to understand you, but you make it hard. Several staring past the wall, past everything, his arms crossed over his chest. Baxter's fingers dug into the sleeves of his shirt, pinching and knitting the fabric with new creases. His voice felt far away, too, like he wasn't there in the same room with you anymore. It's odd, really. I'm the one who left. I hurt you. And yet I haven't stopped seeing you as someone important to me, important in my life. It truly does seem as though everything I did was for no reason at all. Baxter gave you no time to process the emotions he stirred before he launched into a non sequitur that sent you for a loop in entirely different ways. So he never stopped caring. He never stopped caring, and yet he still kept his distance. Why? Jules, do you know that I enjoy dyeing my hair? What? For a second you weren't sure that you heard that right. Baxter had been painfully honest with you these last few seconds only to prompt you on hair dye? Right? It convinced you he was doing the same thing that he always did, changing the topic when it became a little too real. When nothing further happened, you realized he was seriously waiting for an answer. Yeah, your hair was dyed when I met you. It had white stripes. Like everything else about him, though, you didn't add that to the conversation. Like everything else about him, though you didn't add that to the conversation. There we go. That's what it was. He smiled faintly as he idly ran a finger along the curve of his bangs. Before I click through, I'm going to predict that his hair isn't naturally black. That was my most dramatic look. However, I started dyeing my hair when I was 14. I'm still dyeing. Another little kernel of truth you hadn't been prepared for. That isn't your natural hair color?
No.
It is not. Haha, I was right. Then what? He twirled one of the longer strands of his hair around a finger. Gray. The journalist might say I could count it as black, that it was black in the right light, as my parents placatingly put it.
Honestly.
The fact of the matter is that it's a dusty gray, quite similar to the frosting, actually. Considering it had been a decade of dye jobs and you've literally never seen his roots show, Baxter was more than dedicated. That's why, the color of the dye. Okay. That's why it got to him. No way. He chuckled at your disbelief. His smile was faint, tucked into his cheek. Yes way. Now, why would I do that? I said myself earlier. Who would notice a color that wasn't exactly black? And why would they care, even if they did? Me. I noticed, and it bothered me, so I dyed it. He pinched the fringe of his traitorous hair again before finally leaving it be, his hand finding its resting place on his upper arm. Was it something I wanted only for my own preference, or was it because I believed it? If I saw it as an imperfection, then that meant everyone else did. Probably the latter. That was the crux of it. He doubted his actions and appearance because others could scrutinize them. Whether they actually would or not didn't matter. He projected self-embedded insecurities on those around him. Baxter only seemed half aware that what was happening. He couldn't fully believe those who cared about him did so without terms or conditions. His jaw tensed with newfound frustration. Baxter was firmly rooted in this moment, stubbornly refusing to take his thoughts away from it. It startled you, in part because this was the first time he had ever opened up to you without prodding, and because at the end of everything you were still the only one he trusted enough to tell it to.
Well,
I have always been like this, you know, Jules. I won't bore you with the details. His voice was as delicate and heavy as glass. I'm sure I've already made you question your remaining here enough as it was. In short, what I'm saying is that I'm a fraud in all regards. You can't take any of it seriously, including what color my hair is. He chuckled darkly, pushing himself off of the refrigerator and busying himself with checking the cake in the freezer. As the tension reached a fever pitch, Baxter reached out to pluck the metaphorical thread and unwound it with a forced levity. No more than 10 minutes or so had passed since you put it inside, but it felt like hours had gone by.
I appreciate the understanding.
Your many attempts to give me credence are noted and appreciated, though. He shut the door again before announcing that he would need to check the oven again to make sure that it was really off. Not that he doubted your ability to turn off an appliance before his own self-preservation. That time is the classic Baxter, a change of topic when it got uncomfortable for him. He always did that. Baxter tore himself apart, shred by shred, exactly like he did to that cake mix box earlier, all for just being who he was. Of course, he wasn't telling the truth when he told you he didn't do that anymore. That was another of his made-up stories, he said for the amusement of the listener. You had some clarity for the first time in years. Baxter returned to your side eventually. His teasing smile softened as his gaze met your pensive stare. You are kind to listen to me complain. He reached out, lightly pressing his fingers to your arm.
I'm sorry.
It was a bad idea to make you deal with that. I won't sour everything that we, Jude, Scott, Miranda, and Terry worked for by ruminating on my indiscretions the night before the wedding. At least not for any longer. His voice was firmer, a change from moments before. He drew his line in the sand for the evening, meaning that you weren't going to be able to pry any more out of him. But perhaps later, if you're interested. Oh. I get it, but we're definitely going to talk later. You'd been the one who started it. You were going to finish it. He didn't give you a response outright, instead favoring a practiced smile. There was a tinge of regret that lingered in his eyes at telling you no again. At least this time, once and for all, it wasn't a no for now.
Good.
Could I offer you a glass of water, Jules? Still or sparkling? Or there's oat milk if you're feeling fancy. The only other drinks in the apartment are, as touched on before, not appropriate for the present situation. I won't repeat every mistake of my life, one of the largest, most impactful ones. Oh, Baxter. Blaine offered water while teetering on the precipice of a deep, meaningful conversation, huh? Where had you heard that one before? Except where you'd been trying to help Baxter open up on that fateful evening long ago, here he was once again displaying social niceties to make sure that didn't happen. Talk about ironic. It was uncanny that the events from 5 years prior should keep coming back to haunt you, But with the sets out of order and the meanings doubled up. Yep. Didn't I just comment on that? As if the two of you were tentatively resuming the motions of a dance you'd thought forgotten, an encore of a summer which had since faded into memory, variations on a theme. Baxter was still regarding you with a polite expression, faintly inquisitive. Right, the drink. That was a real question. Some sparkly water would be nice.
Certainly.
Let me take care of that. Please feel free to make yourself at home in the living room. I promise you the sofa and chairs are comfortable despite their boxy appearance. You opted for the sofa and eased yourself down into the various colored cushions. It was a pleasant surprise to find that Baxter hadn't been kidding. Your seat was nice and plush. Your host busied himself with the fridge he'd been intimately acquainted with, fetching 2 cans of sparkling water. As he did so, you couldn't stop yourself from taking a peek at the refrigerator shelves from where you were sitting, wondering how much it resembled the one in his resident condo. That had been a paltry and tragic affair, and thankfully it was a thing of the past. Baxter now kept a healthy range of foodstuffs in his own home. He was looking after himself. Good. If we're not there to do it, he'd better do it himself. Having taken care of the refreshments, Baxter made his way over to you and seated himself in a chair. Your glasses filled with fresh condensation were placed on the coffee table. He went to the effort of placing coasters underneath each one with his now free hands. A minute's pause was filled by the two of you slowly sipping your drinks. Baxter returned his glass to his place and took a stab at conversation. He elected for something easy, starting to run over the plans for tomorrow once more, with a focus specifically on what you and he would be doing rather than the happy couple.
Now,
To clarify, I will take care of the decorations in the morning alongside Terry, Miranda, and the other members of Jude's family. In the meantime, you'll need to... and so forth. It was a subject entirely within his wheelhouse, and you nodded vaguely along as he went through the itinerary and stages, asking him questions if you needed clarification. Eventually ran out of details to touch upon, and you both ran out of stuff to drink. It was decided that now was the time to tackle the remainder of the cake. In the kitchen once again, Baxter retrieved the carrot cake from the freezer and placed it on a wooden cutting board with the same gentleness as if it was a newborn baby. What came next was entirely incomparable to childcare. He selected a large serrated knife from a block on the counter. Yeah. You passed over the stencil prepared earlier while he tested the surface of the cake with his fingers. Satisfied with the consistency and temperature, he put the stencil on top. There was a moment of adjustment, lining the paper up so that the cake was centered underneath. Then Baxter made a small murmur of relief.
hallelujah.
Thank goodness the cake didn't turn out too small. This should be doable. All I have to do is follow the guidelines we have so nicely laid out. Good luck. He stepped back to give him enough space to work without bumping his elbows. With the knife in one hand and the other pressing down on the stencil to steady it, Baxter set about carving. He worked slowly and methodically, removing the bulk of the excess with straight, clean cuts that merely scraped the outline of the stencil. Then, moving inwards, he began to refine the curved edges. The scraps of surplus cake were tossed into the pan it had been baked in, forming a small mound of crumbly fragments. He wondered if he'd ever watched Xavier do something like this before. Or perhaps he'd seen one of the many cake competition shows on these days. I was just thinking that because I watch the Great British Baking Show on Netflix all the time. That's like what I turn on when I need something mindless. And one season they did illusion cakes for their showstopper. And none of them did a game controller, but the skill required to create the cakes is very similar to this. He went at that cake fearlessly. Regardless, once there was no cake left protruding from underneath the stencil, he peeled back the paper to reveal a controller-shaped cake. While that was, of course, the expected outcome, the whole point of making a template, in fact, you experienced a thrill at seeing it work. Baxter was as happy about it as you were. He beamed up at you, making a brief jazz hand motion to emphasize the finished product, like he'd performed a magic trick. It's great to see more relaxed Baxter here. Let's hope that he stays that way. One controller cake as ordered. Our hard work with the guideline paid off magnificently. Thanks, you did a good job. Thank you as well. Now, in terms of decorating, if it's not asking too much, I'll pass the mantle to you at this point. Cutting the custom design will stretch me to the limits of my abilities, and the final design will look far better with a more professional touch. That's right, because we can decorate better than before.
Is that
I hate
fine?
to put the responsibility on you, but it's the most visible part of the process. No need to worry, I came to help out. You can leave it to me. Thank you. Excellent. I'll stay out of your way then. You start to tidy the work surface with a little sweeping stray crumbs and fragments of carrot cake into a cupped hand and shepherding them to the waste disposal. Baxter gathered the supplies. He brought out the bowls of frosting and arranged them in a neat line on the counter beside the cutting board. You heaped a hearty dollop of the bright red frosting onto the controller and began to apply it evenly. The irregular shape presented you with an enjoyable challenge. The corners where the handles joined with the main body of the controller required some finesse in order to coat uniformly, and briefly mourned the lack of a proper offset spatula. Not to mention a turntable. You thought of the tools that Xavier must have at their disposal with envy. Wondered if one day you'd ever swap tips with them. Baxter asked questions about this and that while you worked. He listened to your commentary with keen interest and offered his apologies, though probably not wholly sincere, for the absence of more professional equipment. I'm ashamed to admit that I had never heard of many of these things before today, or rather, I don't remember any of it. I have a bad habit of missing details whenever Xavier goes into too much depth about their craft.
You know.
But now I'm glad for the opportunity to be educated. I could hardly complain. It was nice to have him for an apprentice, you thought. Buoyed by his enthusiasm, he made short work of the chrome coat and the base layer of frosting. From there, you added the remaining details using a couple makeshift piping bags. Those were engineered by simply snipping the corners off some plastic Ziploc bags. That was my exact thought when they mentioned makeshift piping bags. The buttons and the joystick were laid in with the not quite black, with some almost but not exactly white used for the markings. And that completed the illusion. The dessert had taken on the form of a modern electronic device. You stood back to admire your handiwork. It didn't look bad at all. Mom would have said it was good enough to eat. It was never going to compete with a fully 3D creation like a commercial bakery could have made, but for a homemade cake prepared at the last minute, it would do just fine. Scott and Jude were going to love it, you were convinced. Baxter was fawning over the finished cake with a mixture of pride and abject relief. He put a hand to his chest, puffing out an exaggerated breath. It is finished. We have a groom cake. With this, we can hope to see the couple's dreams fulfilled a little more fully.
You are incredible.
I'm grateful for your help, Jules. Truly, this wouldn't have been possible without you. He tried to point out that he would have probably managed on his own, but Baxter dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. If not for your company, I'd likely be scraping cake off the walls, and besides, I wouldn't have suggested making the groom's cake in the first place if not for my prior experience with overnight confection catering.
See?
And I have you to thank for that. See? A watertight argument. You'll simply have to accept my appreciation. He fixed you with his most winning smile, attempting to dazzle you into submission. You shrugged, not wanting to disagree with something as clearly so certain of. Plus, it was nice to be praised. Yeah, who doesn't like being praised? Come on. You looked down at the fruits, cake of your combined labor. Yeah, we're gonna go with this one. Your heart did a little wobble seeing Baxter so happy. With the utmost care, Baxter proceeded to put the cake safely into a container and stow it in the fridge, arranging things so that it had its own dedicated shelf for ease of retrieval. A glance at the clock on his wall showed it past 1 in the morning. Oh no, you hadn't counted on finishing up that late. Baxter's expression tense. He'd realized the same issue. Then his shoulders slumped and he made a gripe of displeasure at the back of his throat.
Oh.
It'll be almost 2 a.m. by the time we get you back to Scott and Jude's house. I'm sorry, I should have been better prepared. Are you at least able to let yourself in? Oh no. Speaking of being better prepared, you should definitely have thought to ask Jude for a spare key. Spend the night! Spend the night! Spend the night! I don't. Sorry. Baxter's brow furrowed once again and he began to worry his bottom lip with his teeth. He could almost see the machinery turning over in his brain. I see. It's far too late at night for us to wake them up, not with their extremely important day today. It's not tomorrow anymore, it's today. He ran a hand through his hair, letting his head fall back and sighing with exasperation. This has been a complete failure on my part. It seems I'm not a very good planner.
Forgive me.
I can only apologize, Jules. You need your rest as much as anyone. If you aren't totally opposed to it, you could take the guest room here for the night. I keep it furnished just in case, so it has yet to see use. You'd be welcome to sleep there, and I could drop you off back at Scott and Jude's in the morning, so you still have an opportunity to get changed before the event. Major, sure you don't mind? Though you accepted the offer as calmly as you could manage, your mind was reeling. You were doing something you could have only ever dreamed of a few days ago. It almost didn't seem possible. Life could be pretty amazing sometimes. I know it's not ideal, but thank you for being flexible, Jules. We should get some sleep. Yeah, we should. Passing out in the middle of a wedding wasn't exactly on your bucket list. The two of you promptly made ready for bed. Baxter showed you down the hallway to the guest room, then rooted around one of the bathroom cabinets for a spare toothbrush. He didn't have pajamas, and Baxter seemed either unwilling or simply too awkward about the situation to offer you any spares. It was fine. You'd manage with just the clothes you had. After satisfying himself they were as settled as you could be, Baxter bade a brief farewell. Yep, that's definitely a guest room.
Take care.
Rest well, Jules. I'll see you bright and early in the morning. Sure you'll be able to wake up that soon? Don't worry, I've had several years of early mornings to get used to the concept. Mostly. In any case, I'll be fine. Baxter bobbed his head before ducking away completely inside his bedroom. He closed the door, headed into your room, went straight over to the spare bed, and tucked yourself in. Sleep had the good grace of not to keep you waiting, not after such a tiring day. Soon you were drifting off into a deep slumber, head empty, save for the smell of unfamiliar bedsheets and a carrot cake. You were woken by the shrill sound of an alarm that you vaguely remembered setting on your phone the night before. You fumbled around on the bedside table to turn it off. Sitting up in bed, bleary-eyed and yawning, you could see that it was a beautiful day. The sky was a pristine blue, the tops of the nearby buildings were gilded in the morning sun. You dressed and ambled out into the living room, sleepily wondering what Baxter might have in the way of breakfast. That was until you were confronted with something that chased all thought of food from your head. He's in his pajamas, isn't he? From down the hallway came a sort of clattering, thumping noise. Every so often you could make out a muttered curse and the sound of someone moving about. The door to the master bedroom was ajar, so you couldn't make anything out through the crack. The commotion was coming from inside. Was Baxter okay? You approached the door, curious as to what the commotion was about. The ruckus intensified as you got closer. It sounded as though California was experiencing a miniature earthquake located entirely in the back corner of one 11th floor apartment, which was in the process of upending his belongings. You caught another snatch of Baxter's voice. There was a groan of frustration, and he muttered an expression that could have sworn was clucking bell, or at least something very much like it. I wonder what he actually said. Baxter? You called tentatively through the crack in the door, but there was no response. You tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. Peering into the room, you could see an untidy mess of pants and shoes and other articles of clothing littering the floor. You watched as a purple button-down sailed suddenly into view and landed in the heap. Your attention was drawn to the far wall past the chaos, where an assortment of knickknacks were arranged on 2 sets of shelves. You spotted a familiar picture frame among them. Yes! He kept it! The shock of recognition came as a tingling across your scalp. He'd kept it, the souvenir you'd got for him years ago. You'd been convinced he would have tossed the thing out or in the back of a drawer. The fact that he'd instead held onto it made you feel a complicated mix of emotions. It was as sad as it was touching. Now was not the time to unpack it, however. And in that moment, you'd wanted to see the man himself, but no matter how you tried, you couldn't catch sight of Baxter from out in the hallway. Desperate times called for desperate measures. You pushed the door open, stepping a short way inside. Now, this is an actual bedroom, because it matches with the living room. On the same side of the room as the entrance, you discovered the opening to a walk-in closet, and at the far end of the closet, took a second to realize what you were looking at. There was Baxter Ward in the flesh and almost nothing else. Oh, he's like in his underwear, isn't he? He happened to be rummaging through his collected wardrobe while wearing only boxers and a pair of socks. He'd been facing away initially, showing his exposed back. Then he turned and you were greeted with a full view of his naked torso. Interesting boxers. When your brain caught up with what was going on, you couldn't stop yourself letting out a little yelp of surprise. Baxter didn't startle, having caught sight of you in the corner of his peripheral vision.
Terrible morning, isn't it?
Hello, Jules. Your heart was pumping, your head was buzzing. He was, wow. I don't know, it seems like a pretty good one to me. Oh, no, we gotta comment on the underwear. Cute underwear. Cute was putting it mildly. Those things were downright charming. Never would you have guessed that Baxter would develop a taste for foliage printed anything. You were a bit ashamed to be so caught off guard by this fact. You still hadn't quite accepted the fact that Baxter had grown out of his adolescent color palette. Those boxers suited him.
Charming.
Thank you, I do my best. Baxter spun on his feet and resumed his work without explanation. Regrettably, your eyes kept being drawn to places they really shouldn't be. And wait. You felt the blood rush to your face as your eyes zeroed in on a second mole of Baxter's, one which you had never seen before. It was on the rear side of his left thigh, very high up. Yeah. It had always been covered by clothes. Even shorts of graceful length would do the trick. You might never have seen it if not for this, whatever it was. You wrenched your gaze away and silently berated yourself for ogling him while his back was turned. It was being improper, even if he had been beyond impolite when he ghosted you for years. Momentarily lost your grip on language. So are things okay in here? Baxter gave a terse sigh, his fingers continuing to comb through his collection of shirts and jackets. They could be better, let's put it that way. I'm sorry my room is in such a state. You've caught me with my pants down in more ways than one. Oh my goodness. I simply can't find my work uniform. It's not an official matter, but there's a particular shirt I always like to wear when on duty at weddings to help identify me as stuff, you see. But it's missing. What I should have done was taken the time to set my clothes last night. Unfortunately, I was distracted. We had baking and frosting and a new guest in my home. His features took on a pinched, agitated quality, his eyes darting distractedly about the room. Either way, I have toned it down or we're going to be late. Faint touch of panic began to creep into his voice, and he started to upend the closet with increased urgency. I can't believe you conned me into thinking you got better with mornings. Baxter let out a short bark of a laugh, catching himself by surprise. It was never intentional, I promise. You overestimate me. I've always loved the early hours of the day, and I learned to channel that hatred more productively. There always seems to be something waiting to go wrong. Baxter grumbled as he relentlessly sifted through the closet, as much to himself as to anyone else. You wondered if he had a habit of thinking aloud even when he was alone. Part of the tragedy of adult life is learning to roll with the punches, so to speak. I suppose I should be proud of the fact that I can at least handle it much better than when I was younger. Thinking about what kind of a panic a younger Baxter would have been thrown into at the prospect of a missing shirt on an important day made a comical sputter of disgust, like he was experiencing a full-body shiver. He smiled, recalling the first time he'd ever interacted with Baxter this early in the day. It had left such a strong impression you doubted you'd ever forget. You'd been so flustered, it was like you'd stumbled across a whole different person wearing Baxter's pajamas and face. Nothing like the man you now knew, who was frustrated, sure, but still managed to approach the situation without letting it crush him, even in just his boxers. Your brain couldn't help but remind you of a strange coincidence that Baxter almost undressed in front of you on that other occasion 5 years ago. There was no almost about the present situation. You wondered how your past self would have reacted if you were somehow able to tell them about this. It was a good thing you couldn't, really. Their mind might have burst. Right. Back then, you hadn't got to see the little pinch of Baxter's waist, or the flare of his hip bones, or the way the snug fit of his boxers accentuated. Actually, you needed to stop thinking for a minute. I'm motherless. Aha! There was a sudden shout over before her from the back of the closet, jolting you out of your train of thought. Baxter stumbled back into the room, a black button-down clutched victoriously in one hand. Hallelujah! I found it, finally.
Honestly.
Close call, if I ever had one. I appreciate you coming to lend your support tools. If you don't mind giving me a minute, I'll be dressing with you shortly. Although, he gave a small giggle, looking down at himself. Since you've already seen me like this, it doesn't make much sense that the time we need to leave is while I put my clothes on. But still, I'm sure you've got better things to do than watch the cleanup of a train wreck. Seeing the cleanup sounds like fun, though. Baxter's eyes briefly flitted to the ceiling, like he was making a silent plea to the heavens.
I see.
You're incorrigible, aren't you? It was said with an attempt at reproach, but his voice and face betrayed him. He couldn't help but break into a small smirk, not meeting your eyes. It did things to you. Not now. We have important work to do. I'd hate for further distractions to get in the way of that. It's my job to be responsible today, you understand? Fun must wait. Why not relax in the living room while you can? We're going to be on our feet for hours once we leave this apartment. You'll thank yourself for it later. Oh yeah. He'd made a fair point, of course, and he chastised yourself for forgetting what day it was. Though you reasoned that Baxter had distracted you first, sort of, accidentally. You could console yourself with the fact that he took your flirting shockingly well, as much as he might try to pretend. Not now was a phrase with a lot of implications. Yes? Seems you finally got through to him. I think Baxter was right to call you a hopeless case. No more dawdling. Alright, I'll see you. You left him to get decent alone and headed out to the living room, popping down onto the first squishy surface you could find. wasn't long until Baxter appeared. You were gazing out a window when you heard the click of shoes on the hard floor, followed shortly after by the man himself, sauntering into view. He was smartly dressed in black from top to tail. His slacks were crisp and pressed, his shoes polished, and miraculously, his shirt seemed to have survived the ordeal without getting creased. The crisis is over, thank goodness. I'll procure our cake from the fridge, and then we should be on our way. Is that fine? You readily agreed, picking up your bag and joining him by the front door. A short trip down the elevator, and both you and the cake were safely bundled into Baxter's car. He pulled out of his parking space and set a course for the suburbs once more. It was still early, the air crisp as it wafted through the rolled windows. Baxter leant one arm on his door, cool and casual. Since we're keeping our creation a surprise, I'll take it to the venue, so don't worry about leaving it here. I'll help out with you to say hello to the betrothed, though.
Now?
As for what happens next, I thought we could prepare you naturally waded into discussion on the minutiae of the wedding plan. You'd already been over most of it, but it was confidence boosting to have it laid out one more time. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot writing on this. It's a big day. Don't want to mess it up. As Baxter described it to you once, weddings and similar occasions were a kind of ritual. You suppose that obsessing over little details was a crucial part of another kind of ritual. Surprisingly, you had begun to feel almost like Baxter's colleague, a fellow planner endeavoring to bring this event to fruition. He's only put in the work by this point. Yep. The conversation didn't stop at your own responsibilities for the day. Baxter reiterated that he, together with Sherry, Miranda, and the other members of Jude's family, would be decorating the wedding hall over the course of the morning. The marriage would be conducted in the late afternoon with a sit-down dinner reception in the evening, so there's still plenty of time to prepare. This detour back to Scott and Jude's was for you to change into your outfit. You couldn't exactly come to their big day in the casual clothes you'd slept in the previous night. You regrouped with the rest of the crew after freshening up. Even though Jude at least knew the reason for it, your cheeks got heated at the prospect of showing back up with Baxter after spending the night at his place. It felt so scandalous. Mr. Ward didn't give the same impression as Terry or Cove or any other the other men you knew, really. Crashing with them was totally cool and no questions to be had. But Baxter, someone both suggestive and inaccessible, staying at his apartment would raise eyebrows. And that was without mentioning the fashion in which your morning had started. It was too late to take it back now. Not that we would. Not that you would even want to. I just said that, didn't I? You rose to final calm before the storm until Baxter stopped the car across the street from the soon-to-be Adam house. That was typical, though. This time he couldn't pull up on the driveway because there's already an occupant stationed there. A shockingly red sports car had been parked facing the road, its spotless painted body gleaming in the ever-intensifying rays of sun. The rental, you assume. Baxter had come through yet again. It was almost exactly the same shade as the controller cake tucked safely away in the back seat. You bet good money that Jude had the motorhead wouldn't be the only one thrilled to ride in it. Walking past the vehicle on the way to the front door, you and Baxter paused to admire the sleek profile and elegant curves. The Corvette somehow looked better up close. The gloss of the paint was reflective. Oh yeah, I forgot it was a Corvette. Oh, I love Corvettes. In the entryway, Baxter rapped on the door with a knuckle. You noticed that he did this in spite of the fact that there was a doorbell. Maybe just another one of his inexplicable mannerisms. After a brief pause, there were footsteps inside, and then Scott was standing in the open doorway. He greeted you enthusiastically, full of restive energy. Hey, welcome back. Oh, and Baxter too. Good morning. Being confronted by the groom you're in the process of keeping a secret from caught you off guard. It would have been prudent to go over the plan for this on the ride over. Baxter, however, had no problem acting fine under pressure.
How are
Good
you?
morning to you, Scott, and how are you feeling today? Excited? Nervous?
I don't know.
Maybe both? No, yeah, definitely both. I thought I'd never sleep, and there was some more commotion in the hallway. Jude came jogging up behind to greet you over Scott's shoulder.
You made it.
How was your night with Terry and Randy, Jules? His demeanor was cool and calm, exuding total confidence despite the nonsensical question, and quickly surmised that sleeping over at your friend's place must be a cover story. You hastened to school your expression, not wanting to give the game away. It was nice, nothing major happened. The important thing about lies was to never embellish more than necessary. You learned that from your mom, who could have told tales from the Olympics, which was ironic, really. She abhorred lying. Fortunately, Scott wasn't the least bit suspicious, his mind obviously preoccupied on more matrimonial topics. You could practically see the daydream bubble of Scott skipping down the aisle. I wanted to stop by briefly to see how we're both feeling before this afternoon and happened to bump into Jules on the driveway. Well rested, Jude?
It's good.
Yep, I'm good. Somehow managed to get Scott to go to bed, too. Baxter, Jude knows the art of relaxation.
Of course.
It's wonderful, there's nothing to worry about on that front. Everything is running smoothly with regards to the preparations. Here, Baxter gave Jude a meaningful look, who cracked into a small grin behind Scott's back. Message received. Okay, sorry, ADHD brain. I completely forgot exactly what Baxter said. Okay, right. So you can focus on getting yourselves ready for your moment without concern, although if anything comes up, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Yusefula giggled throughout the exchange in spite of herself, seeing Baxter suavely passing veiled messages when he'd been such a frantic mess half an hour before was too funny. Of course! Baxter cleared his throat, glancing at his phone. I best get to the venue since everything is in hand here. Terry and Miranda have already arrived there.
I appreciate this.
Don't let us keep you, and thanks, Baxter, for everything. We really appreciate what you've done for us. Jude made as though to offer his agreement. Baxter smiled and raised a hand to send the flow of gratitude.
My pleasure.
You are too kind. However, as it stands, my job is only half finished. I'll be only too happy to accept your words once the wedding is over. To do so now would be premature. Sure, dude, but thanks anyway. Jude met your gaze as he said this, include you in the sentiment. You certainly hope that your bacon lived up to his rising hopes. Baxter nodded and turned to leave before doubling back to catch you briefly by the elbow. I'll see you later, Jules. Terry should come by to pick you up once you've had an opportunity to get changed. Sure thing. Baxter smiled warmly and gave your arm a nearly imperceptible squeeze before letting go. His goodbye said, Baxter wasted no time. He strolled briskly down the driveway and got into his car, sparing you a wave as he drove away. Behind you, Scott cleared his throat.
So,
Come in, Jules. Jude and I were just starting to get ready ourselves. Do whatever you've got to do. Oh, and there's finally a key for you. It's on the kitchen counter. Yeah, we remembered that one a little late. They certainly had, but you couldn't pretend as if you asked for it. Or that you were mad you got more time with Baxter. Yes. Now, I have some pants to iron. He vanished into the house, whispering in his step. As you were crossing the threshold, Jude mumbled to you under his breath. Hey, help yourself to the food in the kitchen. Not sure if you had to pass on breakfast this morning or... He spoke guiltily, but you brushed it aside. You lost out on some sleep, but the look on Scott's face would be worth it. It's okay. Thanks, Jude. You were left to your own devices for the remainder of the morning. Availing yourself of Jude's offer, you cobbled together a quick breakfast before heading upstairs and taking a well-earned shower. As a treat for working hard, you indulged in the hot water for a while. But eventually you returned to the other guest room that had been loaned to you and hauled your suitcase onto the bed before fishing out your wedding attire. A dress, formal button-down shirt and pants, formal blouse and pants, formal button-down shirt and a skirt, you had a formal blouse and a skirt, a full suit. I'm tempted with one of these. Formal blouse and pants. It was a relief to see that the journey hadn't wrinkled anything too much. You weren't going to be turning heads for the wrong reason. When you had your look finalized, there was little left to do other than wait for Terry to come collect you. It felt fine to be loafing about the house dressed to the nines. Not like it was the first time you'd gotten up to that. Fortunately, you weren't left to your own devices much longer. Shortly before noon, a car honked to your phone and alerted you of a text. It was Terry, thoroughly making you aware that he'd arrived. You sprang to your feet from the sofa you'd been lounged on, pausing in the hallway to give a quick goodbye to Scott and Jude, wherever they were, then dashed out the front door. Terry's van was parked across the street in the place Baxter's car had occupied before. You went around to the passenger side and popped the door open.
Preposterous.
Someone's looking fancy. Where are you going today? Over in the driver's seat, Terry was wearing a swanky-looking waistcoat and an enormous grin. He looked so eager that if you hadn't known better, you would have guessed it was him getting married. Same place you're going, Terry. What a coincidence. Get in and buckle up already. We've a wedding to catch. Okay. Alright, this is what we're gonna say because I have a feeling the wedding is gonna take a while. And so this seems a good spot to stop for now. So yes, we have made progress with Baxter. We finally got through to him. Or maybe he just got tired of trying to remain aloof. I think I looked at the gallery. Yes, I did. And of course, we have all of the Derek pictures. I have not found all of the Cove ones. I think this one is one you romance Cove. Still missing a couple of the Cove pictures. I think I'm gonna have to go poking, figure out how to get those ones. But anyway, yeah. So next week we're probably going to do. We'll probably be focused on the wedding. maybe finish, but I'm not making any guarantees because I don't know how much longer is left. But I remember the Derek epilogue. It took me a 4-hour stream and then basically a 2-hour stream. So if the Baxter epilogue is about the same length, then next week we should get through the rest of it. And then after that, I don't know. I know the Penny Larceny Supervillain Gig Economy, or Gig Economy Supervillain, will be available July 25th, I think. So I'll start streaming that, but there's going to be a gap before that's available, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll figure it out. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed yourselves, and I'm not making any guarantees about Wednesday. This past Wednesday I didn't stream because I screwed up with the Andromeda 6 stream. It stopped for a while, and the part where it stopped was at a crucial point in the episode, so it's not like I could just mash them together and then upload it to YouTube. So I had to basically re-record it, but I didn't live stream at that time. I just re-recorded it and uploaded it to YouTube directly. So if you want to see my Andromeda 6 playthrough, the VOD is available on Twitch, but not for long. A slightly different version is available on YouTube, just as this will be. I will include links to the DLC, of course, in the description, and of course there should be links to each of the DLC in the descriptions for the other ones. I may just live stream the demo again because I just want to do it over again, but I won't be uploading that version if I do. Demo of Penny Larceny, sorry, should have explained better. But yeah, until then, until the next stream, take care and have fun. Bye!